Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another interactive vlog. This is the first one of the new year, and hopefully it will continue to be a regular thing that I do during 2018. So, before I get into talk about the metric ton of gaming that I got in over the last couple weeks, I just wanted to go through a couple kind of update things for the channel, for me, for how I'm doing things now. So the first thing that I want to talk about is that I've changed my rating system again. So initially, when we started out doing the podcast, I had a 2-point rating system. So like it'd be 9 point. No, a 1-point rating system, so like 9.9 or 9.5. And then I switched that up to just a single 10 scale. Well, I've dialed it back yet again to a 6-point rating system. I've listened to a few podcasts that do the 6-point rating system, and the more I thought about it, and the more that I thought about how I rate games, I was basically already rating it on a 6-point scale anyways. So I've switched it up. I'm doing a 6-point scale. Basically, well, 1 is very bad. I don't anticipate giving out many 1s. 6 is an excellent game. I'd always want to play it. Just, fires on all cylinders for me. And kind of the cutoff point for me is the 3 to 4 range. The 4 is a good game. I'm willing to have it in my collection. I'd play it. And then once you get down to the 3, it's a game that I think is okay. It's more of me is the problem. It's just not a game that fits my style. So I'll probably get rid of 3s out of my collection and keep anything from 4 and up. So if you see any reviews from me, I'm going to be doing a 6-point scale. If you saw my most recent Lisboa review, I used a 6-point scale for that one, and it was a 6 out of 6. I really, really like that game. Also, if you were watching the YouTube stream the last little while, I did a live streaming of a playthrough of Clans of Caledonia. So there was a kind of like a test stream. I think it went pretty well. The setup is pretty good. I did buy a new camera because the camera that we were having for looking at us, the people, as we were playing kept shutting off after 20 minutes, and then actually an hour and a half into the stream, the camera overheated and wouldn't even turn back on. So I was like, okay, this is going to be annoying if I want to do anything that's longer. So I got a new camera. I'm hoping to try it out soon. The problem is just trying to schedule people to play games. So if anyone has any suggestions of what games they would like to see played, just let me know. I'm open for suggestions. We might be a little bit adventurous in the next few weeks and try and do a live playthrough of 1846. We've just been playing the heck out of that game. We're up to 4 completed plays now, and we already have our 5th one scheduled, and we're thinking about doing a live stream for that one. And also, David, who joined me for the Clans of Caledonia one, encouraged him to come back out and get on the live stream with me again. His Twitter handle is @GamesYYC. Just tweet him and say how much you would like to see him back with us for some live streaming as well. But yeah, I had fun. I really enjoyed that medium for playing, or for talking about games, for showcasing games. It gets you to see the pieces. Plus, the thing for me that I really like about games is the interesting decision making that goes into a turn. So getting to show you guys that and kind of talk through what's going through my head as I'm playing the game, I found that really enjoyable and kind of communicates what I want to about the game. So yeah, that's kind of the update stuff, the new rating system, the live streaming playthroughs, and hopefully I'll continue to do more of them in the future. So, going on, since it is the new year, I thought I would talk about the resolutions that I had given myself for this year, and then maybe make some new ones for the coming year. I mean, it's January; it's almost obligatory to do that sort of thing. So last year, I had 2 goals for myself. I had one to play every game in my collection once. And I think about the start of the year, I had maybe around 120, 130 games in my collection. At the end of the year, I'm down to 88 games in my collection. And of those 88, 17 were still unplayed. Now, the 88 was an updated list of including games I had acquired as well. So I had gotten rid of quite a few games during the year, some of which I played and then was like, you know what, I think I'm done with this game, or this game isn't as good as what I remember. So I just got rid of it out of my collection. So at the end of the year, I was sitting at 88 games, 17 of which were unplayed. 3 of those were new games that I hadn't had at the start of the year. But some of the games are just ones that are harder to get to the table because they need more people. Like one of them was Twilight Imperium 3rd edition. I mean, that's something that you had the schedule the day for. And honestly, like with time being the most precious commodity that I have now with gaming, it's hard to make that decision of, okay, you know, do I want to play 4 or 5 1-hour games, maybe 3 1.5-hour games, or do I want to sit down and play a 6-hour game of Twilight Imperium? There's that weighing of the value of the time versus what I'm getting out of the game. So if I was given the choice between playing like 1846 right now or Twilight Imperium, I mean, I'd probably play 1846 at the moment. But, and especially with the new edition out, you know, I'm just like, well, you know, I want to give it another try and kind of see where I'm at with it. Especially like I talked about in the previous vlog with Kingdom Death Monster as well. Do I want to play, you know, 5 hours of that or 1 game of Twilight Imperium? It's just, it's difficult to get those games to the table when there's other things competing. And that's part of the reason why I got rid of so many games this year, is because I don't want games that are just okay to be competing for time with the really good or really great games. And even now I'm getting to the point where like there's so many great games that I like in my collection that I don't want just the good games to be competing with them for time. So that was one of my resolutions. I'm going to continue that one on, if only for the fact it allows me to keep track of what I'm not playing. And if I'm not playing it year after year, then what is it doing in my collection? And I'll be able to take a look and see, well, should I actually be keeping it? The other challenge that I gave myself was the all for 5 challenge. So have the total number of plays of each game in my collection up to 5. And this would only be for the games that I had owned previous to January 1st. So for that one, I managed to get it down to 13 games left with variable numbers of plays. So 13 out of my 88 games have less than 5 plays. I actually managed in the new year to get one of those off the list. I've got my 5th play of Kemet in. So that's another one. Keeping track of which games I haven't played enough, and then if something continues to not getting plays, you know, is it worth keeping around in the collection? So I don't know if I should keep these as resolutions or just things that I keep track of, but we'll just call them resolutions because it makes it easier. And I haven't thought of really any other challenge thing that I want to that I want to do gaming related this year. So I'm just going to keep the same ones, and hopefully this will be the year that I actually achieve them, because the last 2 times that I've tried, I have failed. But I think that's true for most New Year's resolutions. Anyways. So, one other thing to talk about is my gameplay over the last little while. I managed since the last interactive vlog to play a lot of games. I got quite a few games. I got quite a few plays of games. I just had a gaming weekend where I had some people over for a few days over the weekend to play games. So I got a ton of plays in there. I think I'm already up to something like 40 gameplays for the year, and it's only the 9th of January. So quite a bit played. So some of the more interesting ones that I wanted to talk about. Well, first up is Gaia Project, the next kind of Terra Mystica game. It's actually funny. So I did a before and after for this, and afterwards I was looking at the cover of the box, and if you look closely, on one of the monitors of the person, it's kind of like a person set up in this cockpit of a spaceship, and on one of the monitors, it's actually a screenshot of the Terra Mystica app, which I thought was quite funny. I had quite a chuckle when I saw that one. But the initial play, you can go see my before and after for my thoughts after that one. But as of now, I'm 6 plays into the game, and I'm having a hard time kind of comparing it to Terra Mystica. It's obviously a very similar game. It's very variable compared to the original Terra Mystica. In this one, the map is modular. The map can change. The end game scoring can change as well. There's 2 different ones that you're going for instead of just one, and then those are variable. The round bonuses are variable, but that's the same as in the original Terra Mystica. There's so much more variation in the setup. The standard and advanced technologies. There's these advanced technology tiles. You only play with 6 out of maybe a dozen of those. The 9 standard technologies are kind of like the cult favors from the first game. They are all the same from game to game, but their setup is randomized. So think of the cult bonuses from Terra Mystica where they allow you to go up certain steps with different cults. Imagine if those were randomly assigned to the different bonuses at the start of the game. So it makes it different. You can't go into the game, I find, with this one set thing, or there's always this most efficient path to go through the game. And I feel like maybe that was something that was not as great about Terra Mystica, is because once you knew an efficient route or an efficient path with a faction, you always could rely on that being there, barring some influence from other players. So the fact that so much is randomized in this is really good, especially with the map. I find in Terra Mystica, depending on the race I play, I have my favorite spots where I like to place, because I already have a plan of where I'm going to be building them. So in Gaia Project, you can't do that. Everything is different every game, so you can't have those preset paths that you're going to take. And I see that David is here and said that I must be talking about A Feast for Odin. No, I'm talking about Gaia Project, but Feast for Odin was actually another game that I got to play 3 times over the weekend. One of the buddies that I was playing with, he was actually the person I first started gaming with. Back when I first started, I played Agricola. We played it a ton together. So when we got together over the weekend, I introduced him to A Feast for Odin from Uwe Rosenberg as well. He I think he grew to like the game as more plays went on. I think this is an interesting topic because it kind of highlights something that I did that maybe was not the best thing to do when introducing a new person to a game. So I liked a house rule for the occupations because that was one of the things I didn't like, the randomness of drawing the occupations. So I house ruled that you draw 3 and choose 1. After talking with people's impressions of the game, after that, they felt that for the first game with so much going on, I mean, there's like 60 plus action spaces, that extra choice or information to try and digest with drawing 3 occupations and choosing 1 was a bit overwhelming. So in retrospective, I probably should have just stuck to the base rules for that and just had them draw 1, especially when you're not familiar with the iconography and you have to look up in the appendix what each card does. It can be quite time consuming, and then before you know it, it's back to your turn and you've just finished looking up the 3 occupations that you drew, and then you got to start looking at what you're going to do for your turn. But it led into an interesting discussion and an interesting kind of dichotomy on how I look at a game differently than maybe somebody else. And I was talking with my wife about this after. When we were talking about, we like the rule of drawing 3 occupations and choosing 1 is because we like to build interesting things during the game. So having more options of a gear that can maybe fit into our machine throughout the game, we like that more. But then I was talking to my buddy, and he was saying how he looked at it more from a point perspective, and he would look at the occupation and just say, oh, this is worth 3 points or 2 points, and then he would play them for the points. Whereas I was like, I didn't even think of that. Like, I'm 11 plays into the game. I didn't even use those action spaces down on the bottom because you can take 1 to play 4 of them. So that could be quite a few points. The thought never occurred to me in 11 plays to do that during the game because it's just a different way of thinking. I think more of building interesting things rather than actually thinking about the points that I would gain from it. I see David says he has to run. Don't worry about the house rule. Rado also just suggested something similar. Too bad he was also wrong. Just kidding. You know, it does make me worry. And I always used to say to Jacob, because he would love house ruling games, and I'm like, what is the point of house ruling a game to make it better? Just go play a better game. So maybe I should take my own advice from before and just play with the rules as are. And if I want something different, then play a different game to get that experience for sure. But man, I just love the choice of choosing the occupation. So I can see both sides of it, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to do going forward. We'll see. We'll probably end up playing it again shortly because it's kind of rekindled the fire for the game, and even this last game that I had with David, he did something interesting that I never thought of. Again, in 11 plays, never thought of doing this, of kind of just ignoring the bottom left of your corner of your board and gaining an exploration board and kind of using that to build up your income and your bonuses, and then just at the end of the game place big chunky tiles out to just cover the minus points on your main board. Again, it's interesting how different people think about games and the different strategies they're able to come up with. And that's why I like games like A Feast for Odin, because it isn't always the same thing that you're doing game from game, and it has such a fluidity to it that you can choose different options and people can think outside the box and do things a little bit differently. So yeah, Feast for Odin were some really fun plays as well. Another game that I got to start playing, and we're actually 3/4 of the way through the campaign, and that's Charterstone. It's the legacy village building game from Stonemaier Games. I had to say, so I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry about anything like that. But in preparing to play the game, I saw that Rodney Smith from Watch It Played had a how to play video up, and I had watched that before receiving the game. And after looking at it, I was a little bit worried that the game would be too simplistic, that it would just be a simple matter of go here, gain these resources, go here, turn these resources in and do this thing, and then go here, gain these resources, and go here and do that sort of thing. And going into that first game, that's kind of the worry that I had. It was definitely like that for the first play and maybe the first two plays, but as you kind of unlocked things and opened things up, it became a much more interesting game. And right now we're at we just finished our 9th play, and it goes to a total of 12. So we're almost through the game. The game though is almost a little bit too short as well for what I would like it to be. I would like something a little bit more in depth. We're playing a 2-player campaign, and we play games in roughly about 35 minutes. It takes us to complete a game of Charterstone. So it's really easy. We can get we usually do 2 games or so in a session because we can get them done in about an hour. But I think something a little bit heavier that kind of went on for about an hour long is kind of what I would have liked a little bit more. But still, it's been an enjoyable experience. I mean, I like opening up unknown things. That was my favorite part of Pandemic Legacy. It wasn't so much the game itself, it was the moments between games when you got to unlock and see and experience new things and adding new rules and stuff like that. I would play the game through just to get to the end of the game to see what would come up. But no, it's been a good game. I like the Euro competitive nature of the legacy aspect as well. Another game that I got to try out or an expansion to a game that I got to try out was Scythe: The Wind Gambit. And I don't think I talked about this one before. So if I did, I'll just reiterate a few things. But the thing that I liked so far about the 2 Scythe expansions is that it adds more of the same, especially for the first one. It just adds 2 new factions. It doesn't drastically change the rules. I talked about it in the last interactive vlog how I felt like the expansions that come from CGE for Dungeon Lords and Dungeon Pets and Zolkin is that they drastically change the game too much, that it just, number one, makes it harder to remember the rules when you want to go back and play it. Especially if you're having 6 months between plays or something like that, you basically have to relearn how the expansion integrates with it, or it makes it more fiddly gameplay experience. So I really like that Invaders from Afar, the first expansion for Scythe, just adds new factions, doesn't change up a whole lot. And the second expansion, I mean, it makes big changes to the game, at least I think so, but it doesn't drastically change the game itself. So in the Wind Gambit, it adds these kind of variable endgame trigger cards. So instead of it just being when someone places their 6th star, the game ends, there might be a little bit of a different rule or a little bit of a different endgame trigger. So the one that we played with was every time you place a star, if it's the first star that was placed for that category, you gained an extra $5. And the game end triggered either when someone placed their 6th star, like normal, or if someone had $40 in their personal reserve. Sorry, but I like that. I like that it's a little bit different, but it's not like it's a huge rule that I had to keep flipping back to the rule book to try and remember. The other thing was that it added, well, the big airships. I mean, they're huge things. They have these little clear standees that they go on and they can move around the board. And the other great thing about them is they have two random abilities that you deal out at the beginning of the game, but it doesn't like change the game again drastically. It's like a little bonus. One of the ones that we used was the hex where we produce, if our airship was there, it would produce one extra good, was kind of the good ability, and then there was kind of a more aggressive ability on it. I can't remember what the one that I had was, but again, they're little tiles that are set up at the beginning of the game, and they're easy to reference. You don't have to keep going back to the rulebook to see the rules and how it integrates with the base game. So I really enjoyed that expansion. More of something similar, more of the same is always good for an expansion, not something that takes the game I like or love and then tries and change the formula, so then I don't know. I kind of had to relearn almost a new game with it. Now, I did see that recently the last expansion for Scythe was announced. Rise of Fenris, I believe it's called, and it has kind of a campaign legacy expansion, but it's not legacy where you're going to be destroying any cards or marking anything up. It says it's fully resettable. I'm not sure how much I'm going to like that expansion for the game, to be honest. I mean, I'm probably going to pick it up. I'm going to try it out. But again, it might fall into that category of potentially changing the game too much to the point where it's just too different. I like games that stick to what they're good at and what they're known for, and just add more of the same. I don't want every game I own to come out with a legacy version of it. The other thing is that I've been thinking too about these legacy games is that they're quite the time commitment as well. Like if you think you're going to pick up a legacy game, it's like 12 plays more. I think Pandemic goes from variable between 12 to 24. Charterstone is 12 plays. So you pick up these games and you have the time commitment. You're most likely going to be putting in multiple plays in a short period of time. So, I think there's a role for legacy games, but sometimes you just want a game where you can just pick up, have a one-off game. You don't have to worry about what happened before. You don't have to worry about the impact that it's going to have in a future game. You just want to sit down and play a game that's a self-contained thing. So I think you need to have those balance of legacy and regular. And I mean, I don't want to see every game come out with a legacy style expansion, because it's just, with so many games to play, it's just tough. I mean, so I have Charterstone that we're almost through. Kingdom Death as well is not a legacy game, but it's a campaign style game. So I guess kind of the thoughts that I had there kind of would also apply to campaign style games. I mean, even so recently, again over this weekend, another game that we played was Arcadia Quest Inferno. And that's kind of a campaign experience as well. I think there's 7 scenarios that you play through in a campaign, and we played through 4 of them, I believe, or six in a campaign, something like that. Anyways, half a dozen, roughly. And again, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, do we play through another game of this campaign, or do we pull something new out and try something that's going to be a self-contained unit itself? The other thing that I was going to mention about Arcadia Quest Inferno is I played Arcadia Quest when it first came out. Jacob had picked up the game, and I played it. I remember saying that of the kind of dungeon dice fighting games that I had played, it was probably one of my more favorite ones. It was quick. I mean, it was fairly simple and straightforward. After playing through this one, Arcadia Quest Inferno, and more recently, I mean, my tastes have changed quite a bit over the years. It was not as enjoyable of an experience as I would have thought of, given how much I talked about Arcadia Quest back in the day. And it got me thinking about dice rolling combat and comparing it again to Kingdom Death, where I mentioned that there's just wildly random negative things that happen to you into Kingdom Death. In Arcadia Quest, I mean, you have an idea of the percentage chance. I mean, ranged weapons don't roll as many successes as melee weapons. You have a chance for these crits, which are exploding dice. But I did not like the dice in Arcadia Quest. I mean, there were times I'd wait for it to come around to be my turn, like sometimes waiting 5-10 minutes, and I would just go, move here, roll, miss. Okay, wait for it to come back around to my turn again. And I think the main difference for me is the fact that it's a competitive setting versus a cooperative setting. When you're rolling dice against somebody else and they're rolling crits or hits and they're doing, you see them accomplishing a lot on the game board and you're not really doing very much because of dice rolls, well then you're like, well, I planned as best I could. I took the best actions that I thought would work. It was just the dice rolls that didn't go my way. I think that kind of leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, especially when it's competitive, because it's just they're doing better than me because of what the dice showed. Whereas Kingdom Death, it's cooperative, so when the dice go poorly, you have that sense of camaraderie. You're all being downtrodden in the game, and it's a little bit easier to swallow as well. So, not a huge fan of Arcadia Quest. I mean, I would play it. I mean, I played it 4 times over the weekend. I'll play it if that's what people want to play, but not one that I'm going to be asking to come out again on my own. So, I got another new game played this year as well. This one's from Portal Games, Alien Artifacts. I mentioned for A Feast for Odin that I liked getting cogs and putting them in my machine. I like engine building, and Alien Artifacts was this kind of engine building card game. It had a theme that I thought was very interesting. I mean, I like science fiction. I like the idea of these huge alien artifact structures that kind of give special powers with spaceships and colonizing planets. I mean, that's kind of my one of my favorite themes, like high fantasy and science fiction. Those are things I love. Those are really the only types of novels I read. I love high fantasy novels. It's awesome. Science fiction is right up there as well. So I got this game. I thought I would like it for sure. Like, it had a theme I like. It had this engine building that I like doing. But after playing it, after playing it, it kind of it fell flat. I think they had streamlined the game to the point that they streamlined the game away from it. It took an hour for our first play, and I was like, okay, if this game can get down to the 20-minute mark, it might be an interesting filler style game to have. But we played it 2 more times, so I have 3 total plays of it. But it was just, hitting the 35, the 40-minute mark. And for the amount of decisions that you have to do in the game, it just wasn't worth the amount of time that it took to play it. So in Alien Artifacts, you have this kind of resource deck. And one of the actual interesting things that they did was that this resource deck is kind of multi-use. It has resource symbols on it, and you can use either one section for the symbols or the other section. So you have some choice on how you use it. It worked really well because I never really felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do on my turn. I always felt like I had some option that was at least a good option to do. It also was used when you go into combat. You flipped over the top card, and in the middle of the card, it had numbers 1 through 4, and then that was just your combat strength for fighting. As well as they had 2 different symbols on it. It had the expand, exploit, what are the four X's? I always forget. Expand, exploit, exterminate, and explore. So it had two of those four symbols. And some cards that you would put in front of you, when you triggered them, you would flip a card off the top. And if that one of those symbols matched the type of card that it was, then it would trigger its ability to score points for you. So it was interesting how they used that one resource deck in a very streamlined way to do multiple things. But basically you have a board. Think of Imperial Settlers, but instead of like the left side being your faction and the right side being common, your left side was your under construction buildings, and your right side was your constructed buildings in your empire. And you could have ships, you could have technologies, and you could have planets. But basically, it's just you spin these different icons from the cards, and you build cards into your empire, triggering a couple different abilities, and then you run the resource deck dry twice, and whoever has the most points is the winner. But I think where it kind of lost a bit was, so each of those, like ship decks, the technology decks, and the planet decks were too similar. There's 4 different types of cards. The planet deck was exactly the same. Every planet that was of an Explorer type was exactly the same as every other planet of the Explorer type on both sides. The ship deck, one side was the same for every single type of ship. The other side had some variants depending on giving you different abilities. And the technology deck was the same for each type throughout the whole deck, and then some variable abilities on the other side. So even though it looked like there was a lot of cards and a lot of different options, there wasn't really as many as you would think. And the way I kind of described it after a couple plays was that it's an engine building game where you build a little like weed whacker engine. You build a very small engine very quickly, and it kind of runs at 8,000 RPMs to the end of the game. And you just do the same things over and over again, plugging it into your engine and getting it out. And that kind of phase of the game, it was too easy to build the engine, and it was too long just doing the exact same thing throughout the game. So I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's very streamlined and works very well. And for some people, I think it might go over well. It was just too long of a game for what it offered. I could see maybe people who are fast card players, like when you hear people talk about playing Dominion and how it's just like playing cards out like very fast and going around the table like that. I think if you can get a group who knows the game well enough and plays it like that fast, you could probably get like a 15-minute, a 20-minute game out. But for a 45-minute game, just not enough there, I think, to keep me coming back. So that was Alien Artifacts from Portal Games. Another game that I got to play last night, and I still have set up on the table, and we're going to play it again tonight, is Agra, where you are kind of producing these goods, processing them. You're going to be using them to take special actions. You're going to be using them to deliver to different contracts, different notables. It's supposed to be a deep Euro game, and the thing that drew me to this one above anything else is the plethora. Like, there's so many different kind of bonus actions that you can take on your turn that it kind of just feels like a lattice work of actions, and you got to navigate your way through those bonuses and put them together in the right order to try and get as much accomplished as you want to do. The games where you can feel inefficient, I've said before, I really like those because I like feeling like I'm gaining a proficiency with a game the more I play it. And I feel like this is a game where you would have that sense that the more you played it, the more you unlocked, the more efficient you felt like you were being in the game. I mean, even towards the end of the first game, I felt like I was seeing paths to do things that might not have been readily apparent. And I like kind of looking behind the curtain almost and seeing these other paths or the things that can connect different actions together. I like that kind of sense of discovery. I think a sense of discovery is one of the most important things for me in a game, or especially to keep me coming back to a game. I mentioned with A Feast for Odin that I talked about earlier, seeing things that I hadn't seen done before. Just means that there's still more here for me to discover, or thinking of things that I can try that I haven't tried before in a game, and seeing how can I make this work? How can I pair this with another strategy in the game to get even more benefit out of it? So I like a sense of discovery in games. If I play a game once and I think I kind of have it figured out, then what's the point in keeping playing it over and over again? I want to feel like I'm coming back after a gameplay and have a little bit more knowledge or understanding, or a little bit more discovered about a game as I play it. So yeah, Agra. The other thing that me and my wife, we played it 2-player. The other thing that we found with the first game, we were talking about it afterwards, was that I think it would be better with more players. I mean, it was certainly playable at 2, but there's just extra kind of following actions that you can do. And I think with more people in the game, because the number of actions doesn't change based on the player count. There's still going to be the same number of actions. So with more people, you're going to be able to get kicked out of actions more. And when you get kicked out, depending on if your guy is standing up or laying down, you get a bonus resource, a favor that you can use to take these favor actions. As well as when you process goods, if someone processes goods, someone else could follow that processing action with one of their goods, and if they do, then the person who took the action gets one of those favor tokens as a bonus. That didn't happen a whole lot in our 2-player game, so I think with 3, I think it would be even more. I think with 4, you get that little bit of extra bonusing that you can piggyback off of other players as well. It's kind of like in Lisboa, where you have those follow actions. I mean, the game is perfectly playable at 2. I mean, I played most of my plays, I think, at 2-player, but the one difference at 3-player is having that extra person just makes it that little bit more likely to take advantage of that aspect of the game of being able to follow other people's actions. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to play it again a few more times 2-player. I'm going to try and get it played 3-player. I definitely enjoyed the first play. Maybe eventually I'll do a review of the game. I mean, so talking about reviews, a couple of the ones that I'm planning on doing in the future, I mentioned Gaia Project. I played that a bunch. I still want to play it a bunch more because I'm still trying to figure out how does it fit in with the whole Terra Mystica. Do I need, if I own Gaia Project, do I need to own Terra Mystica? Are they different enough games that I can have both? Are they similar enough that you can essentially call it one game system? I mean, they're very similar, like I said, but I get a different feeling when playing Gaia Project, so I kind of just need to play it enough to kind of tease out what exactly I feel about the differences between the two, and then I want to do a review of that game as well. So is there any questions that anyone might have? Anything that you'd like to ask? I mean, I mentioned before, if you weren't here when I mentioned about the live streaming that I did for the gameplay run-throughs, any games that you would like to see me do a playthrough of. If you watched it, was there anything that we can do better that would make it a better experience? Or is there anything that you really liked about it as well? And for those who listen, because I post these on the podcast as audio forms as well, send me an email at mapleleafreviews@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, or my website, mapleleaf.com, and go to contact us, and you can send me a message there as well. Let me know, because I want to know what do people enjoy watching. The other thing that's difficult about these, man, is you get perch. I don't know how people just can talk for hours and out or on end. Let's see. Let's go through some of the other games that I played recently. Another one that I played that has got quite a bit of buzz, and was on Kickstarter not that long ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And I mean, I played it last year. I borrowed it from David. He had gotten the Kickstarter, and I played it, and I was like, man, this is really cool. So I backed the kind of reprint expansion that came on Kickstarter, and that's Seventh Continent, where you are kind of exploring a seventh continent and taking different actions and trying to survive, and you're cursed, and you're trying to figure out how to lift the curse from you. So after the first play, I was like, man, this is cool. It has this kind of interesting life mechanism where your deck of cards that you use to do these different skill tests also represents your life. So the more actions you try to take, the more you run your life down, and then you need to eat to get those cards back into your deck. But then also when you take skill tests, you get to choose one of the cards that you discarded to put into your hand, and then you can build that as a piece of equipment or an item, or it might be an ability that you can hold in your hand to use later. So I thought it was a very interesting game after that first play. So I asked him if I could borrow it again and play through it some more. So played through, because you can't really do like plays of that game. It's really more how much time you spend playing it, because one curse could take you 10 to 12 hours to go through. But I think I spent about maybe 7-8 hours going through the curse, and I eventually reached a point where I just didn't care about what I was doing in the game anymore. You kind of have this like clue card that kind of gives you an indication of what path you should take through the continent to get through your curse. And we were following it, and like there's kind of like these little checkpoints almost that kind of, you're like, oh yeah, this is what it represents on the clue. This makes sense. Yeah, we're definitely here in this point. But we went into this dungeon, and we were going around in the dungeon, and I mean, we were almost dying because we were running out of cards. And I got to the point where I was like, am I even supposed to be here in this dungeon? Is the last like hour and a half of what I was doing for nothing? And I don't know, that feeling of not knowing, like I was talking about with legacy games, I like not knowing something. I like discovering something, but I don't like the feeling of, am I wasting my time and this is not where I'm supposed to be? Like when there's one thing that I have to discover, I don't like all these paths that I can go down that just dead end and don't lead to the thing that I'm supposed to be discovering. I think that is kind of the feeling I got from it, and I was just like, I told Jenny, my wife, I'm like, you know what, if you're done, I'm done. I don't need to play it anymore. So after that first play, I was like, yeah, I definitely need to get this game, because it came back on Kickstarter. It was doing an expansion, and because of the size of the game and how many cards that it has, they said that it isn't likely going to be ever coming to retail. So I was like, perfect, got it played, gonna get it on the Kickstarter. And then I was like, okay, I want to play it some more in the meantime, because I really enjoyed that first play, and I played through an extra like 5.5, 6 hours of the game, and then I was like, you know what, I'm done. So it actually, thanks to David, I backed out of the, or thanks to David lending me the game, I backed out of the Kickstarter and saved me some money from having to buy it, because it had some interesting things going on, like the mechanisms I thought were interesting, especially in that early game. The other thing that kind of threw me off towards the later exploration part of the game is I kind of had my items set up how I wanted them to, and I was happy with that. I was happy with the cards that I had in my hand, because I had a couple cards that I didn't have to discard. If I did a certain test, I could show it to get a bonus. So then I found that the decision making just became not as interesting for the later skill checks, because we would just discard cards to do the skill checks, and it was like, oh, do you want any of those cards to put into your hand? I was like, no. And I was like, well, do I want any of these cards to put into my hand to use? I was like, no, I'm happy with how I got set up. So one of the decision points in the game got completely removed for me as the game progressed, as I got set up, because I was just like, okay, now we're just discarding cards and going through. So that whole interesting thing of discarding cards and then being able to add one to your hand, which then you could build to add to your tableau, just became an uninteresting aspect of the game later on. But I can definitely see how it could be very interesting for some people. I mean, I don't think it's bad. It just didn't work for me, and I think the main thing was feeling like I could have been wasting my time doing something that was wrong in the game. And I like I mentioned before, that sense of discovery in games, that there's no wrong way to discover how to play a game. Like when you can just go in and try whatever you want to try to do, that's the thing I love the most. But in this game, I felt like I couldn't do that. And when I was doing something, I had that worry of, okay, I could just be wasting my time and not actually progressing towards lifting my curse. And I mean, also the whole fact that once you run out of cards, you could potentially die. Wasn't that interesting? So someone asked, the game that I was talking about is the Seventh Continent. Was the game I was talking about. Not sure what publisher did that one, but it was a Kickstarter game. So yeah, that was Seventh Continent. Another game that I got to play that I had actually I've been having my eye on for a while was Raiders of the North Sea. Now this is it's been out for a couple years, I think. It's kind of a worker placement Viking game where you're going to be gaining these kind of party members, going on these raids to gain resources. Could be these Valkyrie tokens there that will kill off members of your party. And the whole worker placement aspect of the game, where on your turn you place a worker to take an action, and then you take off a worker to take another action. So you always get two actions on a turn, but there's kind of different power level of workers. So you could place a lower level worker and then take off a higher level worker that somebody else had placed. I thought that was an interesting idea and twist on worker placement. So I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I'd really like to get this game tried. Kind of like what I mentioned with Charterstone before, where I had this worry that the game would be too simplistic, was always in the back of my mind as well. So I never picked it up myself. But again, thanks to David, he had the game and lent it to me, and I got to play it. Played it. It was an enjoyable game, but after playing it, I was like, okay, yeah, I don't need to play this game again. It was kind of what I was expecting. It was a little bit too simple in the fact that, okay, well, how do I want this resource? I just can see it very clearly. This is where I go to get this resource. I want money. This is where I go to get money. What do I use this resource for? Okay, this is the one thing I can use this resource for. There wasn't really a whole lot of diverging and multiple option paths, kind of what I talked about with Agra being with that game. There wasn't that same thing in this game. So it was a good game, very light worker placement style game. I think it worked really well. It looks beautiful. I mean, the kind of pastel, vibrant, not really pastel, but very vibrant colored artwork. I mean, it just looks gorgeous on the table. But I'm happy that I got to play it. But I don't need to own it. It's just a little bit on the lower of the complexity side, and it doesn't have that discovery aspect that I've kind of talked about during this vlog that I really enjoy. Discovery, I guess, being the theme for this vlog. So we're getting close to the hour mark. Soon be wrapping up. If anyone has any questions or any final thoughts that they would like to ask, now would be the best time. I'll probably do one of these again in 2 weeks. I'm also hoping on putting out a before and after for the Agra play that I did yesterday. That'll probably be coming in the next couple days. Tentatively the 19th of January, that's where we're going to try to do the next live stream gameplay for 1846. That's very tentative, nothing solid. If everyone's comfortable doing it and I can get everything set up, we'll do it then. So the thing for that is, well, it's going to be a very long stream. The last time we played 4-player, I believe it was about a 4-hour game, and the teaching will be about an hour. So we normally like to play early in the morning, especially because David has a less flexible schedule than the rest of us. We usually start at 8, so I might start at like 7 a.m. Mountain Time explaining the rules, and then we'll start playing at 8. So keep an eye out for that. SU Park asked, did I give Dragonfire another shot? I have not played it again. I've been rolling it around in my head, thinking about playing the kind of dungeon crawl scenario that people were suggesting for me. I think I might, before I get rid of it, just to kind of see how much of a difference there is between the quick start and the other one. I mean, but I don't think in the end I'll end up keeping the game. The main thing that kind of turned me off, aside from the quick start, was the fact that it's a deck builder that resets every game, and that's kind of not what I was looking for. Pure kind of deck building games, I've gotten rid of them. All of them, actually, that I have. So the fact that that's the kind of game that it is just doesn't excite me. Play the quick start with 4 characters. That might be hard because it's hard to get 4 people together for me. And like I was mentioning before, is the valuable time when I do have 4 people together. We have very limited gaming time, so I don't want to kind of go through that exercise that might not be as enjoyable when I have people over to play. But maybe I'll try the dungeon crawl at least and see how that goes. I mean, it was interesting. I could try. They mentioned I could try 2 players with 2 characters. Could try that as well. The other interesting thing about that Dragonfire video was, I mean, there were so many people that were quite vocal about my my play of that. I mean, I thought it was interesting how different people think. I mean, for me, my kind of thoughts on it is if a publisher is going to include a play this first scenario in the game box, I mean that's open for criticism. 100%. Like, publishers should have to think about how are they presenting to people, presenting their game to people for their first play, because first impressions sometimes are all you're ever going to get. I mean, how many people play a game once and just never come back to it? So people criticizing me for not looking on BGG or reading the FAQs before playing a game. I was like, yeah, sure, it might be out there, but I don't like, when I get a game, I don't go digging through the BGG forums or the publisher's website to try and figure out, well, what's the best way to play this game. I open the game box, I read the rules, and I do what it says. I don't think for any game I've done that before. So I don't think that's an expectation that people should have of people to do, especially when the vast majority of people don't even know what Board Game Geek is. They're not going to be able to find the forums on how they should play their first game. So I think it's a legitimate first impressions of the game. And SU Park says, the quick start with 2 characters was a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah, I mean, the feeling that I had after that was just like, I mean, it was just horrible. I mean, I don't think it was indicative of how the game would play, but they set up a scenario to be the worst possible thing. I mean, it would be the same thing like, imagine playing Agricola, but, you just kept having to feed, like, first 1 food, then 2 food, then 3 food, then 4 food after every single action. It would be horrendous, and you would just end up having so many negative points. It wouldn't be interesting at all. But yeah, I mean, I have been rolling it around in my head to give it another shot and to play the actual game to see what it's like. But again, I think it's just that deck building aspect. Again, not the gameplay, but the type of game that it is, I think just wouldn't fit for me. And I think that's kind of the distinction that is through my head is, yeah, sure, that horrible experience was kind of a deterrent for me with Dragonfire, but in the end, the thing that I'm leaning towards getting rid of it for is because of the style of game that it is just something that I'm not really interested in. Not because of the game that it is. The same thing like Dominion. Like, Dominion was a really good game. A lot of people really like it. I mean, it kind of kickstarted this whole deck building mechanism in games. But if I owned Dominion, I would probably, well, actually I did own Dominion. I got rid of it just because it's not my style, not because it's a bad game. And I think that for people who like that sort of thing, I think the kind of campaigns of Dragonfire would be really good. And the person mentioned 2 players. Don't forget, each player represents 2 colors each. We did play with that rule, that we were each had two classes, because I believe that comes into effect for cards that you play, as well as when you make saving throws. You reveal a card, and if it matches your type, then you make the saving throw. So it makes it easier in that respect. But the game was just over so quickly that we didn't get to see anything. I mentioned in the video, I bought 3 cards to add to my deck in the whole game, and my wife bought 4. And you get them in your hand right away, which is which is better than it going into your discard pile and having to wait to redraw it. I liked the idea of that. SU Park asked, if it's not my style, why buy it? Honestly, the D&D theme was the thing that drew me to it. Plus, I had heard that Shadowrun Crossfire had this kind of permanence in the game, I did not fully appreciate. I'm not one to do a whole lot of research into games before picking them up. I usually see something that interests me, and I'll just buy it and give it a shot. So if something catches my eye with the theme or maybe the company that does it, I have a good track record with them, or the designer, I'll usually just pick up the game. So I heard a few people talk about Shadowrun Crossfire, this kind of deck building game with this permanence and building up these characters, and I had thought in the back of my mind that it would be more similar to Arkham Horror, the card game, which I played this last year and I really liked. But it's where you're building a deck that you carry through different scenarios, and then you're upgrading that deck, and you're carrying that through. I did not fully appreciate that Dragonfire was a game where you reset the deck and built it every single game. So when I saw that kind of was like, okay, this is not the game that I thought it was. Arkham Horror, the card game, love it. I've picked up every Mythos pack so far. I've played through all of them as well. I'm only one behind in the new Path to Carcosa campaign. I really, really like Arkham Horror, the card game. Really enjoyable game. I think we did a review of that one on the channel, so you can find that on the YouTube channel for our review. I believe at the time I gave it an 8 out of 10. Again, going back to I've recently changed my rating system from a 1 to 10 scale to a 1 to 6. But for me now, I think it's with the more Mythos packs coming out and the more deck building options with the larger card pool, I think like it's a 5 out of 6 or a 6 out of 6 for me now, because it's just the more content, the more options, the more characters that I can choose to build deck for, the more stories, scenarios to go through. I really, really like Arkham Horror, the card game. So yeah, that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you had a good time listening to me ramble on, and we'll see you guys next time. All right, take care. And if I can find the stop button. Here we go. All right, see you guys.